One morning, a man in a worn suit raced down the city sidewalk clutching his old briefcase. His interview was just minutes away. Suddenly there came a sharp screech of tires, a cry of pain. A woman had fallen hard on the slick pavement, her papers scattering. Without hesitation he ran to her aid, shielding her from the rain with his own coat. Had no idea she was the CEO of the company that had fired him weeks earlier, and that his single act of kindness would change both their lives forever. Before we dive deeper into this powerful story of second chances and compassion, tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. The morning air bit at Thomas Johnson's cheeks as he hurried down the busy sidewalk, his worn dress shoes splashing through puddles left by the night's rain. He checked his watch, 7:45. 15 minutes to make it to Preston and Associates for the 9 o'clock interview that could change everything. 6 weeks. That's how long it had been since Vertex Innovations had let him go, along with 22 other people deemed redundant during the restructuring. 6 weeks of watching his savings evaporate, of rationing his grandmother's medications, of lying awake at night calculating how many more mortgage payments he could make before they lost the house. Thomas's phone buzzed, Mrs. Thompson confirming she'd arrived to care for Grandma Rose. At least that was covered for the morning. The interview at Preston and Associates represented his first real opportunity since the layoff. Administrative coordinator position, solid benefits, enough salary to keep them afloat. He'd spent the previous evening rehearsing answers until midnight, pressing his one good suit with care, printing resume copies on expensive paper he could barely afford. His route took him down Maple Street, the fastest way to the bus stop. That's when he heard it, a sharp screech of tires, a sickening thud, and a woman's cry of pain. 20 yards ahead, a figure lay crumpled on the wet sidewalk, papers scattered everywhere like fallen leaves. A delivery bike sped away, the rider looking back briefly before disappearing around the corner. Thomas froze mid-step, 7:47. The bus came at 7:52. Miss it, and he'd never make the interview on time. Around him the morning crowd flowed past the fallen woman like water around a stone. A businessman in an expensive coat glanced over, then away. A jogger maintained her pace without breaking stride. 2 college students kept walking, eyes fixed on their phones. The woman tried to sit up, her face twisted in agony. Her right wrist bent at an angle that made Thomas's stomach turn. He looked at his watch again, looked at the woman, at the receding backs of people who had decided this wasn't their problem. Thomas thought about Grandma Rose, about the mortgage payment due in 12 days, about the Preston interview that represented his only solid prospect in 6 weeks of searching. Then he thought about what Grandma Rose would say if he told her he'd walked past someone who needed help. His feet made the choice before his mind finished the argument. "Ma'am, don't move." Thomas knelt beside her, setting down his portfolio carefully. His resume copies inside, pristine and useless now. "An ambulance is coming." He was already dialing 911. The woman was in her early 40s, yellow hair pulled back in what had been a professional bun, now coming loose. Her charcoal pantsuit bore dirt and coffee stains from the spilled travel mug beside her. An expensive leather briefcase lay open, its contents scattered. "No ambulance," she gasped, trying again to rise. "I have a board meeting, critical, can't miss it." "Ma'am, your wrist is broken, you need medical attention." "I'll manage." Her voice carried authority despite the pain. Green eyes met his, sharp and determined. "I have to manage." Something in her desperation resonated. Thomas recognized that tone, the sound of someone who couldn't afford complications, whose entire world balanced on being exactly where they needed to be at exactly the right time. He understood that feeling intimately. "The ambulance is already coming," he said gently, gathering her scattered papers. "And trust me, you can't manage this alone." 7:50. The bus was pulling away from the stop down the block. Preston and Associates was across town. Even if he left this second, he couldn't make it. The woman was watching him, her face pale. "You were going somewhere," she said weakly. "You look like you're dressed for something important." Thomas gave a faint smile. "An interview." "Then go," she said. "Don't lose your chance because of me. And leave you here bleeding on the sidewalk." He shook his head. "That's not who I am." As he organized the documents, trying to keep them dry, his eyes caught the letterhead. Catherine Reeves, Chief Executive Officer, Vertex Innovations. His hands went still. Vertex Innovations. The company that had discarded him 6 weeks ago without a second thought. The corporation whose restructuring had cost him his job, his health insurance, his stability. And here was its CEO, lying injured on the pavement, while he threw away his only job prospect to help her. The irony cut deep enough to draw blood. Thomas stared at the letterhead for a long moment. Catherine Reeves wouldn't know him from any of the hundreds of lower-level employees she'd never bothered to meet. She'd never seen the mailroom, never noticed the people who made her company function. To her, people like him were just numbers on a spreadsheet, easily eliminated when profits demanded. He could walk away, call 911 from down the block, make sure help was coming, then catch the next bus. Still be late, but maybe Preston would understand. Maybe they'd give him a chance. But he looked at her face, the pain, the vulnerability, the very human fear in her eyes, and saw past the title, past the company, past everything except another person who needed help. "What's your name?" she asked, as sirens approached in the distance. Thomas hesitated. The truth didn't matter, she wouldn't remember him anyway. "Thomas Johnson, Catherine Reeves." She attempted a smile through the pain. "Thank you for stopping, Thomas. Most people," she glanced at the empty sidewalk. "Most people don't. Most people should," Thomas replied quietly. The ambulance arrived, efficient and professional. While paramedics assessed Catherine's injury, definitely broken, possibly requiring surgery, Thomas continued gathering her belongings. Her briefcase was Italian leather, probably cost more than he made in a month back when he had a paycheck. The papers inside detailed board presentations, financial projections, strategic initiatives. "Sir, are you family?" a paramedic asked. "No, I just stopped to help." Catherine's voice was strained. Would you come with me? Just until I can contact my assistant. My phone screen is shattered, and I need to postpone meetings. Please." Thomas looked at his watch. 8 o'clock. The interview was completely gone now. No amount of rushing would salvage it. "Yeah," he said, climbing into the ambulance. "I can do that." As they pulled away, Thomas caught his reflection in the ambulance window, a 29-year-old man in a carefully pressed suit, holding a briefcase that wasn't his, missing an interview that might have been his salvation, helping a woman who represented the corporation that had destroyed his life. Grandma Rose would be proud, he thought. And then I really hope she's right about karma. The emergency room at St. Mary's Hospital smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Thomas sat in the waiting area while Catherine was taken for x-rays, his phone in his hand, staring at Preston and Associates' number. He should call, explain, ask to reschedule. But he knew how these things worked. They had 10 candidates scheduled back-to-back all morning. Someone hadn't shown up, that person was automatically eliminated. Simple as that. He'd been on hiring committees before, back at Vertex. No shows meant unreliable, and unreliable meant disqualified. He typed out a brief email anyway. "I sincerely apologize for missing this morning's interview. A medical emergency prevented my attendance. I understand if the position has been filled, but I remain very interested if any future opportunities arise. Thank you for your consideration." It felt hollow even as he sent it. 8:30. His interview had been supposed to start 30 minutes ago. Someone else was sitting in that chair now, giving impressive answers, making a strong impression, getting the job Thomas desperately needed. "Mr. Johnson," a nurse approached. "Miss Reeves asked me to bring you back. She needs help making some phone calls." Thomas followed her through the maze of curtained exam areas. They found Catherine propped up on a gurney, her right wrist now splinted temporarily, her face still pale but more composed. "I'm sorry to keep bothering you," she said when she saw him. "But I need to reach my assistant, and I can't work my phone with one hand. Would you mind?" "Of course not." She recited a number. Thomas dialed and handed her the phone awkwardly so she could talk. "Patricia." "Yes, it's me. I've been in an accident." "No, I'm fine, but I'm at St. Mary's Hospital. I need you to postpone this morning's board meeting." "Yes, all of it. Tell them I've broken my wrist and I'm waiting on surgical consultation." "No, indefinitely. I'll need at least a few days. There was someone who helped me, a young man named Thomas." Catherine's eyes found his. "Patricia wants to thank you. Would you mind?" Thomas took the phone back. A crisp professional woman's voice came through. "Mr. Johnson, this is Patricia Winters, Miss Reeves' executive assistant. On behalf of Vertex Innovations, I want to express our deep gratitude for your assistance this morning. It's really not necessary. Nevertheless, could I get your contact information? We'd like to follow up and ensure you're properly thanked." Thomas gave his number, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. He didn't want thanks from Vertex Innovations. He didn't want anything from them except perhaps an apology for the callous way they'd discarded 23 people without warning or adequate severance. But he kept those thoughts to himself. After Patricia hung up, Catherine looked at him with genuine curiosity. "You've been here over an hour. Shouldn't you try calling about your interview? Maybe they'd understand." "Maybe," Thomas said, though he knew they wouldn't. "But right now, you need help more than I need to make excuses. What else needs to be handled?" Over the next 40 minutes, Thomas helped Catherine manage her crisis. He called her driver and arranged for her car to be brought to the hospital. He contacted her attorney about the board meeting postponement. He even called her dry cleaner to cancel a pickup. Through it all, he learned things about Catherine Reeves that complicated his simple narrative of corporate villain. She was worried about disappointing her board, yes, but also about a community center opening she'd promised to attend. She fretted over a scholarship program launch scheduled for next week, asking Patricia to ensure it went forward with or without her presence. She wasn't just worried about profits and presentations. She cared about things that mattered. It was easier when he could hate her from a distance. At 9:45, a surgeon arrived with X-ray results. Clean break, surgery required, probably that afternoon if an operating room opened up. "You've done so much already," Catherine said after the surgeon left. "You should go. You've missed your interview, but maybe you can salvage something from your day." Thomas gathered his portfolio. "I hope the surgery goes well, Miss Reeves. Catherine, please." She studied him with those sharp green eyes. "The interview you missed, what kind of position?" "Administrative coordinator, similar to what I've done before." "And before? What kind of work?" Thomas chose his words carefully. "Administrative logistics, operations support, making sure things run smoothly behind the scenes. You're good at it." "I can tell." She paused. "Thomas, give me your contact information. Not for Patricia, for me personally. I'd like to thank you properly once I'm past the surgery." "That's really not necessary." "Maybe not necessary, but right." Her tone left no room for argument. "You sacrificed something important for a stranger. That deserves acknowledgement." Thomas wrote his number on a piece of hospital stationery and handed it to her. What he didn't write was his email address, his full work history, or any detail that might connect him to Vertex's recent layoffs. Some truths were better left buried. The bus ride home felt like traveling through fog. Thomas stared out the window, watching the city blur past, his mind struggling to process the morning's surreal events. He'd thrown away his best job opportunity in 6 weeks to help the CEO of the company that fired him. A woman who had no idea who he was or what her company had cost him. His phone buzzed. An automated rejection from Preston and Associates. "Thank you for your interest in the administrative coordinator position. We have decided to pursue other candidates. We wish you the best in your job search." Thomas closed his eyes and pressed his forehead against the cool glass. When he finally got home, he found Mrs. Thompson sitting with Grandma Rose in the living room. The home care nurse looked up, concerned. "You're back early. Did the interview go well?" "It didn't happen," Thomas said, setting down his portfolio. "There was an emergency." Grandma Rose's eyes, still sharp despite her trembling hands, studied his face. "What kind of emergency?" he explained while helping Grandma Rose settle more comfortably in her chair. "The accident, the ambulance, the hospital, the hours of helping a stranger who turned out to be someone significant." What he didn't mention was which company Catherine ran. "You did the right thing, baby," Grandma Rose said when he finished. Her voice carried the gentle firmness that had guided him through childhood. "That woman needed help, and you gave it. The good Lord sees these things. The good Lord doesn't pay the mortgage, Grandma." "No, but he opens doors when you do right." She patted his hand with her trembling fingers. "You'll see, that interview wasn't meant to be. Something better's coming." Thomas wanted to believe her, but faith didn't fill an empty bank account or a bare refrigerator. After Mrs. Thompson left, Thomas sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, scrolling through job listings. Administrative assistant in a law firm required 3 years legal experience. Operations coordinator for a non-profit, paid barely above minimum wage. Warehouse supervisor, night shift 40 miles away. Nothing came close to what Preston had offered. Nothing came close to what he'd lost at Vertex. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Johnson. This is Patricia Winters, Catherine Reeves' executive assistant. I wanted to let you know that Miss Reeves came through surgery beautifully. She wanted me to pass along her thanks again, and to tell you she'll be in touch soon. I'm glad the surgery went well, Thomas said. But really she doesn't need to. She insists. Patricia's voice warmed slightly. Between you and me, Catherine doesn't forget people who help her. Expect to hear from her soon. After hanging up, Thomas sat staring at his phone. What did hear from her soon mean? A thank you card, a gift basket. He didn't want charity from Vertex Innovations or its CEO. The irony gnawed at him. If Catherine knew who he really was, knew he'd been one of the people her company had tossed aside, would she still feel grateful? Or would it be awkward, embarrassing, something to be smoothed over with corporate platitudes? That evening, Tyler Williams stopped by, Thomas's best friend since high school, now a social worker who never let Thomas wallow in self-pity for long. So let me get this straight, Tyler said, nursing a beer at Thomas's kitchen table. You helped the CEO of the company that fired you, missed your only decent job interview, and now you're expecting what, a parade, a medal? I'm not expecting anything. Good, because life doesn't work like fairy tales, man. You did a good thing, that's its own reward. Tyler leaned back. But you know what, at least you can live with yourself. How many of those people who walked past her can say that? Living with myself doesn't pay bills. No, but it means you're still you, still the guy Rose raised right. Tyler's expression softened. How is she, by the way? Her tremors are getting worse. The new medication isn't helping as much as we hoped. And you're rationing it, aren't you? Tyler's voice carried gentle accusation, stretching it to make it last longer. Thomas didn't answer, which was answer enough. Thomas, man, you've got to ask for help. There are programs. I've applied to every program that exists. We make just enough that we don't qualify for assistance, but not enough to actually afford everything. Thomas rubbed his face. I'll figure it out. I always do. But later, alone in his room, Thomas did the math again. Savings $317. Mortgage payment due in 12 days, $1,200. Grandma Rose's medications due for refill in 18 days, $240. Utilities, $190. Even if he found a job tomorrow, the first paycheck wouldn't come for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3. They were running out of time. 3 days later, Thomas was studying job listings at the kitchen table when his phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello, Thomas Johnson. A woman's voice, not Patricia this time. This is Catherine Reeves. Thomas sat up straighter. Miss Reeves, how are you feeling? Sore, but healing. The surgery went well. I'll be in a cast for 6 weeks, but the prognosis is excellent. She paused. Thomas, I'd like to meet with you. Are you available tomorrow morning? Say, 10 o'clock at Vertex Innovations headquarters. Thomas's stomach tightened. Vertex, the last place he wanted to visit. May I ask what this is regarding? I'd rather discuss it in person. Will 10 o'clock work? He should say no, should keep his dignity, keep his distance from the company that had shown him none. But curiosity won, and maybe underneath, a tiny spark of hope he didn't want to acknowledge. 10 o'clock works. Excellent, I'll have you added to the visitor list. Ask for Patricia when you arrive. After hanging up, Thomas sat in confused silence. What could Catherine possibly want? Surely not to offer him a job. She didn't even know he used to work there. Unless she'd found out, the thought made his chest tighten. Had she researched him, discovered his employment history? Was this meeting to, what, apologize? Explain? Tell him the help he'd offered had been tainted by his former employee status. You look like you've seen a ghost, Grandma Rose said, shuffling into the kitchen with her walker. Thomas explained the call, leaving out the complication of his former employment. See? Grandma Rose's face lit up. Didn't I tell you? Doors opening, baby. That woman wants to thank you proper, maybe help you out. I don't want charity, Grandma. It ain't charity if you earned it. You saved that woman from lying on the street. That's worth something. She settled into her chair. You go tomorrow, hold your head high. Whatever she's offering, you deserve it. That night, Thomas dreamed he was back in Vertex's mailroom, pushing his cart through endless corridors, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Thomas arrived at Vertex Innovations 20 minutes early, wearing his interview suit again. The building looked exactly as it had 6 weeks ago, imposing glass and steel, the company logo gleaming in the morning sun. He'd entered through the service entrance during his 8 months of employment, a side door marked deliveries and staff. Now he walked through the main lobby, feeling like an imposter among the professionals in their expensive suits and designer shoes. At the security desk, a young guard he didn't recognize checked his ID. Mr. Johnson, yes, you're expected on the executive floor. Take the elevator on the right to the 40th floor, the executive elevator. Thomas had never ridden it as an employee. Regular staff used the service elevators that stopped at every floor. This one rose smoothly, silently, bypassing everything in between. The 40th floor reception area radiated wealth and power, mahogany furniture, original artwork, carpet so thick his footsteps made no sound. Patricia Winters greeted him with a professional smile. Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming. Miss Reeves is expecting you. She led him through double doors into a corner office dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the city. Catherine Reeves sat behind an enormous walnut desk, her right wrist in a cast, her expression warm but serious. Thomas, please come in. Sit down. Patricia withdrew, closing the doors with a quiet click. How's the wrist? Thomas asked, settling into the chair across from her. Painful but healing. The surgeon says I'll regain full mobility with physical therapy. Catherine studied him for a moment. Thank you again for what you did. I've been thinking about it constantly. Your choice to stop when everyone else kept walking. To sacrifice your interview, to help a complete stranger. Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true. Catherine leaned forward slightly. I watched at least 6 people walk past before you stopped. That says something important about your character. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. You said you wanted to meet. May I ask why? Because I'd like to offer you a job. The words hung in the air between them. Thomas felt his pulse quicken, confusion and hope and suspicion all tangling together. A job, he repeated carefully. Doing what? Vertex is launching a new initiative, a comprehensive support program for employees dealing with significant caregiver responsibilities, family medical situations, elderly parents, special needs children, people who are trying to balance demanding work with demanding personal obligations. Catherine's green eyes held his. We need someone to coordinate this program, someone who understands these challenges firsthand, someone with practical logistics experience and genuine empathy. I'd like that someone to be you. Thomas's mind raced. This was more than he'd dared hope for, better than Preston and Associates, maybe better than anything he'd find elsewhere. But the knot in his stomach tightened. Miss Reeves, Catherine, before you make that offer, I need to tell you something. He took a deep breath. I used to work here, at Vertex, in the mailroom. I was let go 6 weeks ago during the restructuring. The silence that followed felt endless. Catherine's expression shifted through surprise, understanding, then something that looked like anger, though not directed at him. You knew, she said quietly. When you helped me, you knew I was the CEO of the company that had just fired you. Not at first, not until I saw the letterhead while I was gathering your papers. Thomas met her eyes directly. By then I'd already called 911, and even if I'd known from the beginning, I like to think I would have stopped anyway. Why? Because you needed help. That's all that mattered. Catherine sat back, processing this. Did you know that helping me meant missing your interview? Yes, and you did it anyway, knowing what it would cost you. Thomas shrugged. I couldn't leave you there. Not because of who you were or what your company did to me, because it was the right thing to do. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened a folder on her desk. Thomas, do you know why you were let go? Restructuring, cost cutting. I was expendable. Do you know who authorized the mailroom cuts? Thomas shook his head. Our former COO Gerald Westridge. He retired last month, forced out actually.
after an internal audit revealed he'd been making cuts without proper analysis. Catherine's voice carried an edge. He eliminated positions that were actually critical to operations, including yours. We've had significant efficiency problems since. Delayed deliveries, miscommunications, interdepartmental confusion. She pulled out another document. Your former supervisor, Drew Martinez from security. Do you remember him? Of course. He wrote to HR after the cuts, stating that your termination had negatively impacted operations. He said you were the only person who truly understood the full routing system, that you trained yourself on every department's protocols, that losing you created problems they couldn't easily fix. Catherine looked up. HR filed his letter and never acted on it. That's changing. A lot of things are changing. Thomas felt stunned. Drew wrote that. He did, and he wasn't the only one. 3 other department heads mentioned problems stemming from the mailroom restructuring. Catherine's expression was grim. So when I say I want to offer you a position, Thomas, it's not charity, it's not guilt, it's recognition that we made a mistake, and it's an attempt to correct that mistake while also building something that should have existed all along. She pushed a folder across the desk. This is the preliminary outline for the Vertex Community Initiative. Benefits expansion, flexible scheduling, emergency support services, healthcare partnerships. I want you to help build it, not because you helped me on the street, but because you have the experience, the empathy, and frankly the character this program needs to succeed. Thomas opened the folder, scanning the pages. It was comprehensive, thoughtful, exactly the kind of program that would have helped him when he was struggling. The salary would be triple what you made in the mailroom, Catherine continued. Full benefits, flexible hours for your grandmother's care, and a genuine opportunity to make a difference for families like yours. It was perfect, everything he needed, everything he'd hoped for. So why did he hesitate?
I need to think about it, Thomas said finally. Catherine didn't seem surprised. I understand. This is complicated, there's history, hurt feelings, completely reasonable distrust. Take the time you need. But Thomas. She leaned forward. I hope you'll seriously consider it. Not for my sake, but for yours, and for all the families this program could help. Thomas left Vertex in a daze, Catherine's offer echoing in his mind. He walked for blocks without direction, processing, weighing, trying to separate hope from suspicion. Eventually he found himself at Riverside Park, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. He called Tyler. They want you back. Tyler's voice carried disbelief. The same company that fired you. Not exactly back. A different position. Better position actually. And you're hesitating because they threw me away once. Ty, what's to stop them from doing it again when the next restructuring comes? Did you ask her that? No, maybe you should. Tyler paused. Look man, I get it. You're scared. But you're also broke. Rose needs her medication and this sounds like a genuine opportunity. Sometimes you gotta take the risk. After hanging up, Thomas sat watching the river for a long time. The water flowed endlessly forward, never backward, never stopped by doubt or fear. That evening he told Grandma Rose everything. The whole truth about Catherine, Vertex, the complications and possibilities. She listened quietly, her trembling hands folded in her lap. So what do you want to do, baby? She asked when he finished. I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes, the money would solve everything. But they hurt me, Grandma. They made me feel worthless. Did that woman, Catherine, did she hurt you? No, it was someone else, someone who's gone now. Grandma Rose nodded slowly. Then she's offering you something honest. Something that could help not just you but lots of other folks too. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does? She reached for his hand. Baby, I taught you to do the right thing even when it's hard. You did that when you helped her. Now she's trying to do the right thing too. Maybe you should let her. I'm scared, Grandma. I know you are. Fear means it matters. She squeezed his hand with what strength she had. But you can't let fear stop you from living. Sometimes you gotta have faith in God, in good people, in yourself, and take the leap. Thomas thought about that. About faith and fear and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from his worst moment. There's one more thing, Grandma Rose said. That woman, Catherine, she could have just sent you a check or a thank you card. But she wants to build something that helps people, that says something about her heart, and she wants you to help build it because she sees something special in you. That says something about her judgment. Or it says she feels guilty. Can't it be both? Can't she feel grateful and guilty and still be offering something real? Grandma Rose's eyes held his. You're looking for reasons to say no because you're afraid. I understand that. But don't let fear masquerade as principle. Her words stayed with him through the night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, playing out scenarios. Working at Vertex again, navigating the building where he'd once been invisible, reporting to people who'd never noticed him before. But also building something meaningful, helping families who were struggling, proving that his life had value beyond what any corporation decided. Around midnight, Thomas got up and reviewed the program outline Catherine had given him. It was good, really good. Comprehensive benefits, flexible policies, genuine support systems. The kind of program that could transform lives. The kind of program he wished had existed when his own life fell apart. He thought about all the other Thomas Johnsons out there, people grinding through impossible situations, sacrificing themselves to care for loved ones, never asking for help because they'd learned help didn't come. This program could reach them. Could say you matter, your struggles matter, you're not alone. And Catherine wanted him to build it. Not because she pitied him, because she believed he could. At 2 in the morning, Thomas made his decision. Thomas called Patricia the next morning and accepted the position. His start date was set for Monday, 4 days away. Those 4 days passed in a blur of nervous energy. He bought 2 new suits, on credit, a risk he wouldn't have taken before. He researched Vertex's organizational structure, studied the executive team, prepared himself to enter not as an invisible mailroom worker but as someone with authority and responsibility. Sunday night, he sat with Grandma Rose in her room. You nervous? She asked. Terrified. Good. Means you care. She smiled at him. I'm proud of you, baby. Not because you got a fancy job, but because you're staying true to who you are. You could have said no out of spite, but you're choosing to help people instead. That takes courage. I learned it from you, Grandma. Then I did something right. Monday morning, Thomas arrived at Vertex at 8:30. He entered through the main lobby, his new ID badge identifying him as Thomas Johnson, Community Initiative Coordinator. No more service entrance. No more invisible. Patricia met him in the lobby and escorted him to the 5th floor, Operations Department. His office was small but had a window overlooking the city. His desk held a new computer, a nameplate, and a welcome packet. Catherine wants to see you at 9, Patricia said. She'll introduce you to the team. Richard Torres, the operations director, will be your direct supervisor for administrative purposes, though you'll work closely with Catherine and HR on program development. At 9 o'clock, Thomas found himself in a conference room with Catherine, Richard Torres, and 3 HR representatives. Richard was a man in his mid-50s, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that assessed Thomas with undisguised skepticism. Let's be clear, Richard said after introductions. I don't care who brought you here or why. This department operates on performance and results. You'll be evaluated the same as everyone else. No special treatment because you're the CEO's pet project. Thomas felt heat rise in his face but kept his voice level. I wouldn't want it any other way, sir. We'll see. Richard's tone suggested he expected failure. You report to me. Every assignment, every decision, every move you make goes through me first. Understood? Understood. Good. First assignment, we've got 12 years of supply chain files that need reorganizing. Everything's gone digital, but the physical files are a mess. You'll spend the next 2 weeks cataloging and archiving them. Consider it your introduction to how this department actually operates. Thomas recognized the assignment for what it was, grunt work designed to humble him, to remind him he was starting at the bottom despite his connection to Catherine. When do I start? Now. Richard stood, storage room 3, sub-level 1. Martinez from security will show you down. As the meeting broke up, Catherine caught Thomas's eye. She looked troubled but said nothing. Richard clearly ran his department his way, and she wasn't going to undermine him. Not yet anyway. Drew Martinez was waiting outside the conference room. The security supervisor's face broke into a genuine smile when he saw Thomas. Johnson, man, it's good to see you back. Drew shook his hand warmly. I heard what you did for Miss Reeves. That's exactly the kind of person you are. Thanks, Drew. I appreciate you writing that letter to HR. Drew's expression turned serious. Should have done more. Should have made more noise when they let you go. A lot of us felt that way. He lowered his voice. Look, Torres is gonna test you. That's what he does with everyone. Don't let him get to you. Just do the work, keep your head down and prove yourself. That's the plan. Storage room 3 was a windowless basement space filled with filing cabinets and bankers' boxes. 12 years of paper files, all needing to be sorted, cataloged and prepared for archival. It was tedious, menial work, exactly the kind of task designed to break someone's spirit. Thomas rolled up his sleeves and got started. For 2 weeks, Thomas lived in that storage room. He arrived early, stayed late, worked through lunches. He created a comprehensive cataloging system, found and corrected misfiled documents, even discovered several critical contracts that had been lost in the chaos. Richard checked on him once, seemed surprised by the progress, said nothing. The other operations staff watched Thomas with curiosity and some sympathy. During his 3rd week, a woman named Jennifer Reed stopped by his office. "You're the one who helped Miss Reeves, right?" She was in her early 30s, sharply dressed, with kind eyes. "I am. I'm Jennifer, operations analyst. Listen, I know Richard's being hard on you. He does that, but don't get discouraged. You're making good progress, people are noticing." "Thanks, I appreciate that. Also, I heard you're supposed to be working on some kind of employee support program. My sister's going through something similar to what I heard you experienced. Single parent, working full-time, can barely keep her head above water. If you ever need input on what would actually help people like her, I'm happy to talk." Thomas felt something shift. "I'd really appreciate that. Can I take you to coffee sometime this week? How about tomorrow? I've got a lot of thoughts." Over coffee, Jennifer explained her sister's situation, a nurse working 12-hour shifts, 2 kids in elementary school, constantly scrambling for childcare, always one emergency away from losing everything. "The thing is," Jennifer said, "she's good at her job, really good. But the hospital's policies are so rigid. If she's late because her sitter canceled, that's a write-up. If she needs to leave early for a parent-teacher conference, she loses pay. There's no flexibility, no understanding that life happens." Thomas took notes. What would help? Flexible scheduling, backup childcare options, the ability to work from home occasionally for administrative tasks, just someone recognizing that supporting her as a whole person makes her a better employee, not worse. "That's exactly what we're trying to build." Jennifer smiled. "Good. Because there are a lot of people like my sister who need someone fighting for them." That conversation led to others. Jennifer introduced Thomas to coworkers with their own stories, people caring for elderly parents, managing chronic illnesses, supporting disabled family members. Each conversation added depth to Thomas's understanding of what the program needed to be. He documented everything, created detailed proposals, built comprehensive policy recommendations, but he still reported to Richard, who continued assigning grunt work. Reorganize the supply closet, update the equipment inventory, coordinate the office move for the accounting department. Thomas did it all without complaint, and in his spare time he worked on the community initiative. 6 weeks into his tenure, the crisis hit. Vertex was preparing a major client presentation, a potential $50 million contract with Meridian Technologies. The presentation required physical prototypes, specialized components worth over $70,000. 2 days before the presentation, the components vanished. Thomas heard the commotion from his office, Richard's raised voice, people scrambling, phones ringing frantically. He stepped into the hallway and saw chaos. "They're not in receiving," someone said. "They're not in storage, they're nowhere." "Check the logs again," Richard barked. "They have to be somewhere." Thomas remembered something. During his storage room project, he'd noticed inconsistencies in how items were logged versus where they were actually stored. The new mailroom system used different location codes than the old one. He went back to his office and pulled up the files he'd created, his own tracking system he'd built to understand the routing problems. 90 minutes later, Thomas found the components in a basement storage area, mislabeled under the new system's codes but stored according to the old system's logic. He brought them to Richard's office personally, along with a printed report. "Where were they?" Richard demanded. "Storage sub-level 2, Section D."
The new labeling protocol doesn't match the legacy storage system. I've documented the issue. Thomas set the report on Richard's desk. This isn't the first time it's happened. I've been tracking similar problems for 6 weeks. Richard stared at the report. Sit down. Explain this. Thomas walked him through it. The routing issues, the communication gaps, the efficiency problems stemming from institutional knowledge loss after the layoffs. He'd spent weeks analyzing it, building comprehensive solutions that addressed root causes rather than symptoms. This is remarkably thorough, Richard admitted. How long have you been working on this? Since my first week. I noticed the problems and wanted to understand them before proposing solutions. Why didn't you bring this to me earlier? Thomas chose his words carefully. Because you weren't ready to hear it from me, sir. You needed to see I could do the work you assigned first. That I wasn't just here because Catherine felt grateful. I had to prove I belonged. Richard was quiet for a long moment. You're right, I've been testing you. Seeing if you were really here to work or just coasting on the CEO's goodwill. And you never complained, never made excuses, just kept doing excellent work. Richard leaned back. I owe you an apology, Johnson. I made assumptions about why you were here. I was wrong. You were protecting your department. I understand that. Still, you've proven yourself. Richard gestured to the report. Let's implement these routing protocols, and let's have a serious conversation about this community initiative you were actually hired to develop. With Richard's support, Thomas's work transformed. He was given real resources, access to key stakeholders, authority to make decisions. He assembled a small team, Jennifer Reed as his analyst, a junior HR coordinator named Michael Torres, Richard's nephew, who proved to be genuinely talented, and a part-time benefits specialist named Sarah Kim. Together they built the program from the ground up. Emergency backup care services, partnering with local agencies to provide same-day childcare or elder care when regular arrangements fell through. Flexible scheduling policies that allowed employees to adjust hours around caregiving needs without penalty. Educational stipends for employees pursuing degrees while working. Healthcare partnerships offering discounted services for family members. But the most innovative component was the peer support network, connecting employees facing similar challenges so they could share resources, strategies, and encouragement. We're not just providing benefits, Thomas explained to the team. We're building community. People need to know they're not alone. The program development took 3 months of intensive work. Thomas often stayed late, driven by the knowledge that every delay meant more people struggling without support. One evening, Catherine stopped by his office around 7:30. You're here late again, she observed. Lots to do. We're launching in 6 weeks. Catherine sat down uninvited. Thomas, I need to tell you something. When I first offered you this position, part of me worried it was a mistake. Not because I doubted your abilities, but because I doubted whether you could separate your personal experience from the professional requirements. Thomas felt his stomach tighten. But I was wrong to worry, Catherine continued. You've exceeded every expectation. Richard tells me you're one of the best coordinators he's ever worked with. The program you're building is more comprehensive than anything I imagined, and you've done it while navigating a department that wasn't exactly welcoming. Richard came around, because you earned his respect. That's not easy, Catherine smiled. I'm grateful, Thomas, not just for what you did that morning on the street, but for what you've done here. You're changing this company. After she left, Thomas sat in his office feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, pride. Not the defensive pride that protected him from hurt, but genuine satisfaction in work well done. His phone buzzed. Tyler texting, Rose's tremors are worse tonight, she's asking for you. Thomas packed up immediately and headed home. He found Grandma Rose in her room, her hands shaking badly, her face drawn with pain. Mrs. Thompson had stayed late, concerned. It's been like this all day, Mrs. Thompson said quietly. She won't admit it, but I think she's in a lot of pain. Thomas sat beside his grandmother, taking her trembling hands in his. Hey Grandma, bad day. I've had worse, she said, but her voice was weak. Tell me about your day, baby. Take my mind off it. He told her about the program, about the launch coming up, about the families they'd help. As he talked, he watched her face relax slightly, finding comfort in his presence even as her body betrayed her. Later, after Mrs. Thompson left and Grandma Rose was settled for the night, Thomas sat in the kitchen doing calculations. Her medication was helping, but not enough. She needed to see a specialist, but the wait list was 6 months long. Unless you had connections. The thought hit him suddenly. He worked for a major corporation now. Catherine had just praised his work. He had access to resources he hadn't had before. But asking for help felt like admitting weakness, like using his position for personal gain. Thomas struggled with it all night. Finally, around 2 in the morning, he made a decision. He sent an email to Catherine, carefully worded, explaining Grandma Rose's situation and asking if Vertex's healthcare partners included any neurologists who might have earlier availability. He didn't ask for special treatment, just information. Catherine responded within an hour. Even at that late night time, I'll make some calls. Don't worry, we'll figure this out. 3 days later, Grandma Rose had an appointment with Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of the region's top Parkinson's specialists. Vertex had a corporate partnership with the medical center where Dr. Vasquez practiced. The appointment transformed everything. Dr. Vasquez adjusted Grandma Rose's medications, introduced new therapies, and set up a comprehensive care plan. Why didn't your previous doctor refer you? Dr. Vasquez asked. I couldn't afford a specialist, Grandma Rose admitted. We were making do with general practitioners. Dr. Vasquez looked at Thomas. Mr. Johnson, your grandmother's condition is manageable with proper care, but she's been undertreated for months, maybe longer. That's not your fault, it's a system failure, but we need to correct it now. Driving home, Grandma Rose was quiet. Finally she said, that woman Catherine, she helped you help me, didn't she? She connected us with Dr. Vasquez. Yes, then I owe her a thank you. And baby. Grandma Rose reached for his hand. Don't be ashamed for asking for help. That's what community is, people helping each other. You helped her, she helped you. Now you're gonna help hundreds of other folks. That's how it should work. Thomas realized she was right. He'd been so focused on maintaining pride, on not being a charity case, that he'd almost missed the point entirely. Helping each other wasn't weakness, it was the whole point. That realization shaped the final version of the community initiative. They added a component Thomas called mutual support, a system where employees who'd overcome challenges could mentor and guide others facing similar situations. We're not creating dependence, Thomas explained to his team. We're creating networks of strength, people helping people. The Vertex Community Initiative launched on a Tuesday morning in late September. Catherine addressed the entire company via video conference, explaining the new benefits and resources. Then she called Thomas to join her at the podium. I'd like you to meet Thomas Johnson, director of our community initiative, Catherine said. And Thomas felt his chest swell with pride at the title he'd earned. Many of you may not know that Thomas helped save my life when I was injured on the street several months ago. But more importantly, he's helped save this company's soul. As Thomas stood before the cameras, looking at hundreds of faces across multiple locations, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. 7 months ago, he'd been unemployed and desperate, sacrificing his only job prospect to help a stranger. Now he stood as a director, leading an initiative that would support hundreds of families. After the launch presentation, Thomas's phone exploded with messages. Jennifer's sister thanking him, employees he'd never met sharing their stories. Drew Martinez, sending a simple proud of you man. But the message that mattered most came from Tyler. Rose is crying happy tears. She says you done good brother. Real good. That evening, Thomas sat with Grandma Rose in her room. Her tremors were better controlled now, her pain managed, her spirits lifted by proper care. I'm proud of you baby, she said, not because you got a fancy title, but because you stayed true to who you are. You helped someone when it cost you everything, then you kept helping even when people made it hard. I learned it from you Grandma, then I did something right. 3 weeks after the launch, Thomas arrived at work to find Richard waiting by his office with a grim expression. We've got a problem, Richard said. Gerald Westridge is back. Thomas felt ice in his stomach. The former COO. I thought he was forced out. He was. but he's still on the board of directors, and he's raising concerns about the community initiative budget. Richard handed Thomas a memo. He's calling for a full review, questioning whether the program's cost justified. The board's meeting next week to discuss it. Thomas read the memo, his heart sinking. Westridge argued that the initiative was feel-good nonsense that would drain resources without improving productivity. He wanted it scaled back or eliminated entirely. He's targeting the program because Catherine championed it, Richard said quietly. This is personal for him. He's trying to undermine her leadership. What do? We prove him wrong. We show the board that this program isn't charity, it's smart business. Richard met Thomas's eyes. You've got 1 week to build an airtight case. I'll help however I can.
Thomas spent the next 7 days building the most comprehensive analysis of his life. He gathered data on employee retention, productivity metrics, healthcare costs, recruitment expenses. He surveyed employees who'd used the program, documenting how the support had enabled them to work more effectively. The numbers told a compelling story. Employee retention in the pilot group was up 23%. Healthcare costs were down because people weren't delaying treatment. Productivity metrics had improved across the board, but numbers weren't enough. Thomas needed stories. He reached out to 12 employees who'd benefited from the initiative, asking if they'd be willing to share their experiences with the board. 8 agreed. Catherine helped Thomas prepare for the board presentation, coaching him on how to communicate with executives who thought primarily in terms of profit and loss. They need to understand that supporting employees isn't altruism, Catherine explained. It's investment. You're not asking them to be kind, you're showing them how kindness drives results. The night before the board meeting, Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept reviewing his presentation, refining arguments, anticipating objections. Around midnight, Catherine called him. Thomas, I know you're worried, but I want you to understand something. Even if the board doesn't approve the program's continuation, what you've built matters. You've changed lives. You've proven that a different way is possible. That's not nothing. But if they kill the program, then we fight to bring it back. But don't carry this alone. We're in this together. The board meeting was held in Vertex's main conference room, a space designed to intimidate with its massive table, leather chairs, and panoramic windows. 12 board members attended. Gerald Westridge sat at the far end, his expression smug. Thomas presented for 40 minutes, walking through the data, the cost-benefit analysis, the strategic advantages of employee support. Then he invited the 8 employees to speak. They were powerful testimonies. A single father who'd nearly quit before the flexible scheduling policy allowed him to attend his son's therapy appointments. A woman caring for her mother with dementia who'd been on the verge of breakdown before the backup care service provided relief. A young man pursuing his degree through the educational stipend program. Each story humanized the numbers, showed the board that they weren't discussing abstract policies but real people whose lives had been transformed. When the presentations ended, Westridge leaned forward. Very touching, he said, his tone dripping condescension. But let's talk reality. This program cost us $2.3 million to launch. That's $2.3 million that could have gone to shareholders, to research and development, to actual business growth. May I respond? Thomas asked. Catherine nodded. Mr. Westridge, you're right that the program cost $2.3 million to launch, but it's already saved us $1.8 million in reduced turnover costs. When you factor in improved productivity and reduced healthcare expenses, we'll break even within 9 months and show positive ROI by month 15. Thomas pulled up a chart. But there's a bigger picture here. Vertex operates in a competitive market for talent. Companies that support employees' whole lives attract and retain better people. Our recruitment pipeline has strengthened significantly since the initiative launched. Exit interview data shows that people are choosing Vertex specifically because of programs like this. He paused, looking directly at Westridge. You're asking whether we can afford this program. I'd argue we can't afford not to have it. Not if we want to compete for the best talent. Not if we want employees who bring their full energy and creativity to work because they're not constantly worried about falling apart at home. One board member, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Carter, spoke up. Mr. Johnson, you were personally affected by the restructuring that Mr. Westridge oversaw. How do we know this program isn't just your way of settling scores? Thomas took a breath. You're right that I was laid off, and yes, that experience shapes my perspective, but it also gives me insight. I know what it's like to be one emergency away from losing everything. I know how that fear affects your work, your health, your ability to contribute." He gestured to the employees who testified. "These people aren't settling scores, they're trying to survive and thrive. The program helps them do that, and when they thrive, Vertex thrives. That's not revenge, that's smart business." The board deliberated for 2 hours. Thomas waited outside with Catherine, Richard, and his team. Finally, they were called back in. Margaret Carter delivered the verdict. "The board has voted to continue the community initiative for a full year, at which point we'll conduct a comprehensive review. We're also allocating additional funding to expand the program to all Vertex locations." Thomas felt his knees nearly buckle with relief, but Margaret wasn't finished. "Mr. Westridge has resigned from the board, effective immediately. His approach to cost-cutting, while perhaps well-intentioned, created problems that have cost this company far more than the savings he generated. We're committed to a different path forward." After the meeting, Catherine found Thomas in his office. "You did it," she said simply. "We did it," Thomas corrected. "I couldn't have built any of this without your support." "You know what I realized today?" Catherine sat down. "When I met you on that sidewalk, I thought you were just a kind person. But you're more than that. You're a leader. You fought for something you believed in, even when powerful people opposed you. That's rare." "I learned from a good teacher," Thomas said. "Someone who took a risk on me when she didn't have to." 6 months later, Thomas stood in the ballroom of the Riverside Hotel surrounded by over 200 people gathered for the community initiative's first anniversary celebration. The program had expanded to all 15 Vertex locations. Over 800 families were receiving support. Employee retention was up 31% across the company. Vertex had been recognized as one of the region's best employers, but the numbers Thomas valued most were personal. Grandma Rose's health had stabilized. He'd completed his bachelor's degree through Vertex's education program. He'd been promoted to Senior Director of Employee Support and Community Relations, and he'd helped create something that would outlast them all, a system where people helped each other, where compassion was recognized as strength, where companies understood that supporting the whole person made better business and better humans. Catherine took the stage to address the crowd. "A little over a year ago, I had an accident that changed my life. A young man stopped to help me when everyone else walked by. His name is Thomas Johnson, and I'd like him to join me up here." Thomas made his way to the stage, still slightly uncomfortable with public recognition. "Thomas taught me something important," Catherine continued. "He taught me that character matters more than credentials, that kindness is strength, not weakness, that companies have a responsibility not just to shareholders but to the whole community of people who make success possible." She turned to Thomas. "I've asked you up here because I have an announcement. The board has created a new C-suite position, Chief People and Community Officer. This role will oversee all employee support programs, community partnerships, and cultural initiatives. It reports directly to me and has a seat at the executive table where strategic decisions are made." Thomas felt his heart racing. "Thomas, I'd like you to consider taking this position. Not because I'm grateful, though I am, but because you've proven you're the right person for it. You've built something remarkable. Now I'm asking you to help lead this company into a future where we do well by doing good." The ballroom erupted in applause. Thomas looked out at the faces, Jennifer and her team, Richard Torres, beaming with pride, Drew Martinez whistling loudly, employees whose lives had been changed by the program. And in the front row, Grandma Rose sitting in her wheelchair, tears streaming down her face, her trembling hands clasped together in joy. Thomas stepped to the microphone. "I accept," he said simply, and the applause grew louder. Later at the celebration dinner, Tyler pulled Thomas aside. "Man, remember when I told you life doesn't work like fairy tales? I remember I was wrong. I mean, this isn't a fairy tale exactly. You worked your tail off, you fought for what mattered, you earned everything you got. But still, the guy who lost everything for stopping to help someone is now a C-suite executive. That's pretty remarkable." Thomas shook his head. "It's not remarkable. It's just what happens when good people choose to help each other instead of walking by. Catherine didn't have to offer me a job. Richard didn't have to give me a chance. Jennifer and the team didn't have to work so hard. Grandma Rose didn't have to raise me right. It's all connected people helping people." That night Thomas sat with Grandma Rose on the hotel's rooftop terrace, looking out at the city lights. "Your mama and daddy would be so proud," Grandma Rose said. "Not just of where you are, but of how you got there. You never lost yourself, baby.
Even when things were hardest, you stayed true. Because of you, Grandma, you showed me what mattered. No, baby, I showed you the path. You had the courage to walk it. She squeezed his hand. And now look, you're lighting the way for other folks. That's a legacy worth having. Thomas thought about the journey that had brought him here. One choice on a rainy morning, to stop when others kept walking. To help when it cost him everything. To maintain his humanity when the world gave him every reason to harden his heart. That choice had created ripples that touched hundreds of lives. Not through magic or luck, but through the simple power of people choosing to help each other. Catherine approached them on the terrace. Am I interrupting? Not at all, Thomas said. Catherine Reeves, this is my grandmother Rose Johnson. Catherine sat down beside them. Mrs. Johnson, your grandson is an extraordinary man. You did a beautiful job raising him. He did most of it himself, Grandma Rose replied. I just tried not to mess him up too bad. They laughed, the three of them, connected by a morning that had changed everything. You know what the best part is? Catherine said. This story isn't over. We're expanding the program nationally next year. Other companies are asking us to consult. Thomas, you're going to influence how corporations treat their employees across the entire country. Not me, Thomas corrected. We, all of us working together. That's the only way this works. As they sat together under the stars, Thomas reflected on what he'd learned. That compassion wasn't weakness but the strongest foundation for any human endeavor. That companies could be profitable and humane. That bridges between different worlds, between CEOs and mailroom workers, between corporate power and human need, could be built by anyone willing to see another person's humanity. His phone buzzed. A text from an employee at Vertex's Seattle office. Just used the backup care service for the first time. My daughter's regular sitter got sick and I was panicking about missing an important meeting. The service found someone within 2 hours. I actually cried with relief. Thank you for building this. Thomas showed the message to Catherine and Grandma Rose. That's why we do it, Catherine said quietly. That's why it matters, Thomas agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, three people connected by kindness, building something that would outlast them all. A world where walking by wasn't the default, where helping each other was recognized not as exceptional but as expected. Where companies understood that their greatest asset wasn't in their buildings or balance sheets, but in the hearts and lives of the people who came to work each day. One choice on a rainy morning had led to this. And every day Thomas made the choice again. To build, to help, to create systems that amplified kindness instead of crushing it. Because in the end, that was the only work that truly mattered. The work of connecting human to human. The work of building bridges. The work of ensuring that when someone fell there would always be someone willing to stop and help them stand again. That was Thomas's legacy. That was what he'd learned from Grandma Rose and taught to Catherine and passed on to hundreds of employees who would carry it forward. The right thing to do wasn't complicated. It was simple: see someone who needs help, and help them. Everything else, the promotions, the programs, the transformation of a company, was just ripples from that one fundamental choice. To stop when everyone else walks by. To help when it costs you everything. To trust that doing right creates more right, that kindness multiplies, that the bridges we build between each other are the only structures that really matter in this world. Thomas looked at Catherine, at Grandma Rose, at the city below filled with people living their own stories, facing their own struggles, walking their own paths. Tomorrow he'd start work as a C-suite executive. He'd have more power, more resources, more ability to create change. But tonight, he was simply Thomas Johnson, a man who'd once made a choice on a rainy sidewalk, and who'd been fortunate enough to build a life from that moment of simple human decency. The rest, as they say, was just details. The important part was the choice, and choosing right every single day.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.